My name is John Pasfield, and the title of this reading will be Shakespeare and Cleopatra, Video 18, Cleopatra and Helen of Troy. This is my novel, Shakespeare and Cleopatra, My Life is Not My Own. A picture of a mummy with one blue eye and one brown eye. So maybe there's two people in there kind of telling the mummy's story to future readers, future listeners. Cleopatra is dead, hovering between life and the afterlife. By some strange process, she becomes aware that a playwright is telling her story. Who is this Shakespeare? What does he know about her? What kind of Cleopatra does he intend to create? He seems to be unaware of her presence. Perhaps if she talks to him as he writes, she can exercise some control over the story of a life that she fears is no longer her own. Now, I'm going to hold up another book here because Cleopatra's in the afterlife. She's dead. She's in a room with a playwright whom she doesn't know at this point is William Shakespeare. She'll learn his name in a few chapters, but she still doesn't know anything about him. But you and I know who he is. He's the William Shakespeare who's sitting there during my whole novel writing the play, Antony and Cleopatra. She knows he's writing about her. She can look over his shoulder and see inky lines on a page, but she can't read English, and she doesn't know anything about him or what he's writing about her, and that concerns her very much. Now, I'm going to hold up another book before I start, so I won't have to hold it up later. I'm going to mention it fairly soon, but this is John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt, a novella by me, and I'll mention it in a second or two. I suppose there are two ways to think about the relationships of famous people. Number one would be to assume that they all know the stories of the other famous people and compare themselves to them. And number two, the other would be to assume that they never think of other famous people at all. When John, the character in my novella John and Santa, the book I just held up, asks Santa whether he knows the Easter Bunny, Santa replies that he knows all about him, but has never met him personally, as they live in different spheres. So John is quite eager to compare these two mythical creatures, Santa and the Easter Bunny. And you can find out a lot about any topic by comparing and contrasting two examples of a famous topic. Now the topic in that case would be two famous mythical creatures, Santa and the Easter Bunny. A little different here in that we have Cleopatra and Helen of Troy. We, the readers of this novel, know that Cleopatra is aware of the legend of Helen of Troy, as the story of Helen forms a layer of imagery in the mind of Cleopatra, which we see expressed in ink and paper on the page. So we know she's thinking of Helen of Troy because it's in her mind. We see it on the page. There's one paragraph of the Helen story in each of the 16 chapters of Cleopatra's thoughts. I will read Cleopatra's version of the Helen story and then speculate as to the relationship between these two famous females. So let's go to then Shakespeare and Cleopatra, the novel, page 7 for the first installment of Cleopatra's thoughts about Helen. Here we are, page 7. Okay, here it is. Helen seems to have been a girl who was born of mixed parentage. Then we go to chapter 14, so that's 7 pages later. Now, images are like billiard balls, and if you have one billiard ball on the table, and then 14 pages later you have another image added to the game, that can distort everything, that can change the relationship of everything that's already on the table. If you think of images on the table, and then seven pages later you get another image, that can change every image. So that's why there's 14 pages between the two images of Helen, because there's a lot of other imagery in the game, in the thoughts of Cleopatra. Some say that Helen was the daughter of a swan and a god. Okay, then we go further on to page 21. Every writer had a story to tell of Helen. No two writers could even agree on Helen's name. Some called her Helen of Sparta, some called her Helen of Argos. Many writers chose to call her Helen of Troy. Then we go to page 31, another 10 pages of imagery, to this. Helen lying on a blanket in a cradle, being cooed to by one of the palace girls, milk dribbling from her cheek and from her chin, trying to make sense of the gossip of the nursemaids, something about the mating of a god and a swan. Okay, from 31 we go to 38. Page 38. Helen gathering wildflowers, alone on a mountainside, hugging a bouquet of color to her bosom. I want to grow up and have a husband and many babies. Will I always be as happy as I am now? Then we go to the next one, page 46. Helen was the cause, some said, of the Trojan War. Others said that was not the case at all. The Trojan War was due, some said, to many contributing factors. There was contention in the classrooms. There was debate beneath the trees. Was hers a story of contentious gods or of human flaws? Then we go to page 55. Helen at the head table of a banquet, food and drink to tempt the palate of a god. How did I ever come to live in the land of Sparta? How did I ever get to marry Menelaus? It was never in my thoughts when I was a girl. Then from 55 we go to 65. Helen looking with wonder at a golden apple. Each of the goddesses is splendid in her own way. I'm glad that I don't have to make that decision. I hear the prize is to be a beautiful woman. But why have I been asked to take part in this affair? And then from 65 to 74. Here it is. Helen was written about by many classical authors. She was a character in many an epic poem. She was known to Homer and known to Virgil, known to Cicero and Aristophanes. Every author made the Helen story his own. Then to page 82. Helen, standing on the deck and looking outward, the slapping of the waves and the snapping of the sail, somewhere on the sea between Sparta and Troy. How did I become the topic of such contention? How did Paris talk me into sailing away? Then we go to the next one, page 90. Helen sitting on the wall and looking out at sea, going over the events that had brought her here to Troy, becoming aware of the consternation down in the courtyard. Another messenger with word from far away. How did I become the cause of all this pain? Then to the next one, page 99. Helen's story was a story that was always welcome. There were those who knew the story in great detail. It was a story that was told at many a fire. The mothers would caution their husbands that as they put new logs on the ashes, save her story until the children have gone to bed. Okay, then 108. Helen making her way among the debris, trying to make sense of the total destruction of Troy. Scorched timbers and broken bricks on the floor of the palace, wondering who is now the vanquished and who is the victor. I wonder what will happen now to me. And then we go to this, 115. So here's the mystery in the story of Helen. Was she a girl who was creating her own story? Was she a plaything at the mercy of the gods? How to scrape away the husk of the storytellers, how to know what she might have thought of it all herself. And then to 123, spilling over a page. Helen sitting and knitting by the fireplace, an old lady with a story she keeps to herself. Oh, I'm aware that I'm a subject of constant gossip. No one on earth could possibly know what I think of myself. Sometimes I wish I could have stayed in Lita's womb. And then the last one, the last segment in the mind of Cleopatra. This is all imagery in her mind, in Cleopatra's mind, to which she's comparing her own story. The last one is this. So who now owns the story of Helen? Hers is a story that is made of putty or clay. A writer can mold it into any shape or form. It belongs to all the future Homers and Virgils. Beneath the ink, they'll be writing about themselves. So, let me turn the page here on my notes. One way in which the poetic novel differs from the prose novel is that the poetic novel does not give the reader the thoughts of the main character, but gives instead the imagery by which the main character is thinking at the deepest levels of thought. So in this novel, we have not what Cleopatra thinks about the various topics that she considers, but the imagery that runs through Cleopatra's mind as she lives through the experience of her interaction with the playwright William Shakespeare and recalls the experiences of her former life as a queen. The topic which seems to concern Cleopatra most of all is the question of just exactly who is in control of her life. Not only is it a concern of her afterlife as to whether she or Shakespeare is in control of her myth, it was also, as a review of her relationships indicates, a lifelong concern when she was alive. As we look inside the mind of the main character of this novel, Cleopatra, as she is assembling and reviewing the imagery of her life at the deepest levels of her mind, we can see that she is not only reviewing the people and events of her past life, but she's also considering the imagery that history has passed down to her, including the story of a fellow illustrious queen, Helen of Troy. If we wish to get a sense of what the Helen of Troy imagery means to the character Cleopatra, then we as readers must do what Cleopatra's doing. So here are 3 stages in this thinking process. Number 1, we can ask ourselves, by reviewing the imagery of the Helen of Troy story, just how much Helen of Troy was in control of her life, and how much of Helen of Troy's story was shaped by forces over which she did not have control. Number 2, then we can ask ourselves, by reviewing the imagery of the story of Cleopatra's life on Earth, a story which she tells to the busy playwright William Shakespeare, just how much Cleopatra was in control of her life, and how much of Cleopatra's life was shaped by forces over which she did not have control. Number 3, lastly, we can ask ourselves just how much Cleopatra is in control of her posthumous life, and how much of Cleopatra's posthumous life is being shaped by the playwright William Shakespeare. To do this, of course, we have to compare Cleopatra's story of her own life as presented in the William Shakespeare play Antony and Cleopatra. Now, a good novel is built of many image patterns, just as there are many cooperating and competing image patterns in every human mind. That there are other characters in the novel to whom Cleopatra compares herself, we can consider, if we wish, whether other comparisons by Cleopatra will yield the same results as the comparison that she makes of her own life with that of Helen of Troy. So she's not only comparing herself with Helen of Troy, she's comparing herself with every other character in her life story as she recalls it and tells it to William Shakespeare. So lastly, I'll say thank you for watching this video. The book is Shakespeare and Cleopatra, My Life is Not My Own. It's available on Amazon when there's more information. It's available on my publisher's website, rocksmillspress.com. And on my website, there are 2 free books. My planning notebook is there. You just click on the icon and you can read of my plans as I was working on the novel. And my journal is there, which is a book I wrote as I was polishing the novel. So once again, thank you for watching this video.